Welcome to the Treasury Elite Entrepreneur Series. I would like to thank all our viewers and members for supporting this noble cause of Treasury Elite, whose main objective is networking, knowledge sharing, and mentoring. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Abhishek Goenka, founder and CEO IFA Global and Treasury Elite. We bring in one-stop foreign exchange and treasury solutions for companies across India for the last 16 years. And today we have Mr. Prashant Khemka. Prashant founded White Oak Capital Management in June 2017, one of the most successful equity PMS in India, with over 30% CAGR since inception in one of its funds. He's a former CIO and lead portfolio manager of GS India Equity at Goldman Sachs Asset Management during March 2007 to March 2017, and also for the Global Emerging Markets Equity during June 2013 to March 2017. Prashant is married to Ritu and has 3 children. He's an avid cricket fan and chess enthusiast in college. Welcome, Prashant. How are you doing today?
Very good, Abhishek. Thank you. Thanks for having me here on Treasury Elite series. Pleasure.
Glad to have you today as a part of the Treasury Elite Entrepreneurship series. In the next few minutes, would love to learn from your experience. So, Prashant, this question I ask to all the global CEOs I interact with is that one common thread which I could link with a lot of global CEOs would be that they are just not doing this for the money. What keeps you excited every morning and to get to work? Or if I may ask, what is your why today?
Certainly. No, thanks for the question. So it was a childhood aspiration, Abhishek, to start an enterprise. And it took me a lot longer. I spent 19 years in corporate world. But always seemed just a year or two away, but ended up taking that long. So I grew up, in a family where it was encouraged. Grew up in a middle upper class family, so that my parents very much encouraged and sowed the seeds. I would say I was surrounded by a fairly well-to-do community of Marwadis who were largely in their own businesses. At that time, 70s, 80s, there was no asset management industry, if you will. So, but they all had their own small units, manufacturing units or other businesses. And so that aspiration was there to have a business of your own. And then in 1985 bull run, after Rajiv Gandhi became PM, there was a 100% rally in the market. So at that time, I got hooked on to equity investing. Like a retail investor, like so many retail investors today are getting hooked on for the first time. Fortunately for me, I never exited, always stayed hooked. And that became like a perfect marriage of aspiration to start on your own and the love for investing, which finally, after many long years, resulted in starting White Oak. So what keeps myself or all my team driven basically is a very strong passion for equity investing. Equity investing, I say, is very similar to a sport like cricket or whatever, and you need to have that drive or passion for the sport. And those who have it, there is, the prime is always ahead of you. You're always learning and always driven. And like cricket or other sports, you don't have to retire at a certain age as long as your mental faculties are working. It stays very exciting, and that's what excites us all at White Oak.
Lovely, Prashant. Prashant, everyone has its shares of ups and downs. You have had yours. Would love to know some of your important milestones and learnings in your entrepreneurial journey over the last 4 years. And how is it different than working with Goldman?
Certainly. So it's in a way been just 4 years, if you will. But seems a long time. So see, what happens is when you work in a corporate, multinational like Goldman, you focus on just your task at hand. So for me, it was always managing the portfolio and compliance, legal, operations, regulatory, all those, there were specialized experts in that, in each of these functions.
Right.
Now, day one, when I started, I didn't even know how to hire for people in these functions. These were all taken for granted. So I would say first, I didn't mention sales. Though sales I had better appreciation of because I used to interact quite extensively with them at home. Uh, so that took me first 2 3 years, 2 3 months, sorry. So when I left in June, early June 2017, till I say end of August, till we launched the first fund, those 3 months very heavily involved in this infrastructure building, infrastructure being both physical infrastructure as well as capability building on the team. That was the most challenging time period because I was completely outside my comfort zone. But once these experts came on board in each of these segments, then that no longer remained a challenge, and I was in a way more in the comfort zone of interacting with the investment team, which is what I have always enjoyed and doing. And fortunately, we've hired an extraordinary team, obviously on the investment team side, but also beyond the investment team, the entire organization. One of the best or most sensible things I've done over the last 4.5 years, and one of the best accomplishments, I would say, has been to get top-notch people in every respect, in every field, not only investment team, but in every role, getting top-notch people. And that has certainly gone a long way in taking, not only taking the burden off of me, but basically making the organization run on its own beyond, I would say not independent of me.
So, Prashant, what went right? I mean, of course, you have had a stellar run in terms of your AUMs and in terms of performance. But what else went so right that in the last 3 4 years, I mean, your fund and your overall setup has been one of the marquee names in the country.
Certainly. No, thanks, Abhishek, for that implicit compliment, I would say. What went right, again, not to belabor, but we didn't cut corners anywhere from day one. So I waited for 19 years in a way to build enough wherewithal so as to give ourselves the highest chance of success. But then when we started, we didn't cut any corners on any of the aspects of the firm. We wanted to make sure that we have all the resources and capabilities on the team for top-notch performance. Performance can still be a function of many other things, but at least we should not. We should prepare ourselves for top-notch performance, and top-notch performance on the investment team front, but also in all other aspects. And all that came together. And obviously, while it seems like 4 years, what also certainly benefited is those 19 years of having spent in global roles at global firms, the interaction with global investor community. So in a way, while in India, it was more or less the first time, though I had launched for Goldman, the Goldman India Fund in equity fund in India in the 2011-12 timeframe. But for many of my foreign investors, I had been interacting with them and managing money for many of them for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah.
So those were the earliest supporters because they had seen the philosophy work, the style work, the approach work. And so they were the earliest ones to come on board. And that's why when we started, 100% of our assets were from offshore.
Yeah.
Even today, 80% of our assets remain offshore. But now with each passing day, as the domestic track record is building up, we are seeing much faster growth on the domestic front. So I would say combination of, best in class, I would say the best team in the industry, that then generating top-notch performance, which then has been appropriately presented to the client. So the sales team also has done a very good job, strong job. And so every piece has to make its contribution. And fortunately, that has.
Excellent. Prashant, we cannot predict markets. People who have typically stayed in business over a decade have realized that. Well, what are your 3 to 4 thumb rules, generally speaking, not speaking in terms of equity markets only, for an investor to keep in mind? Some learnings that you have picked up during your journey of investing.
Certainly. No, you yourself said the most important lesson that I tell clients to keep in mind, something that was one of the first lessons I learned in my investing journey back in the 80s when I started. What I learned was what you just said, predicting the market is impossible. When people say it is very difficult, they are trivializing the problem. Very difficult is something that can be done, but it's just very difficult. Impossible is something that cannot be done. So I often use the dialogue from Dawn movie, which I watched around the same time in the mid 80s. Dawn ko pagadna mushkil hi nahi, namumkin hai. Dawn still gets caught in the movie, but to get the market, predict the market in the near term, next few months or so, is truly impossible. It is like a coin flip. You can do a PhD from anywhere, Ivy League school or anything, but we know better than predicting the next coin flip than the lay person on the street. That is the most important thing to keep in mind, which has become second nature to our team, in that we don't ever have the false sense of confidence that we empirical evidence from around the world over long periods of time, measured in decades, not months or quarters or years. Over long periods of time, returns from equity markets tend to be more or less in line with nominal GDP growth of the country. Plus minus 1%, you may add dividend yield to that. So if you look at US, over 50, 60 years or so, or last 20 years, US has delivered about 5-6% return. Last 10 years have been stronger, but the prior 10 years were weaker. That's more or less in line with nominal GDP growth rate plus dividend yield, 1%, 2% here or there. There is sound logical underpinning to that as well, because the return from the market is a function of 3 things. To quickly go over, let's assume a factor like cash flow or earnings, right? So the return from the market over any time period, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, month, or longer, 20 years, is going to be equal to change in cash flow / earnings over that time frame, multiplied by change in the multiple that the market is trading at on that cash flow or earning, plus the dividend yield. Now, if you for a minute think of dividend yield as about 1 percentage point for a minute, park that there, then the return from the market is a function of change in, call it earnings, because that's what people are always used to talking about, change in earnings of the market times the change in multiple or PE multiple of the market. Now, over a 20-30 year period, let's say, the change in PE multiple becomes very small contributor. Let's say the PE multiple has changed by 30% over the last 30 years. 30% over the last 30 years would mean 1%. Keeping the math simple, geometrically, it would be even lower.
Yep.
So, but 1% is what the contribution of a 30% increase in multiple would be. 1% from dividend, 1% from change in multiple. The bulk of the return will be a function of change in earnings or the change in cash flow, whichever way you look at it. That over a long period of time has compounded in India last 30 years, for example, more or less in line with nominal GDP growth rate. And the logic is because if corporate profitability as a percentage of, say, top line remains more or less in a stable, in a band, which usually is the case globally, with cyclicality, no doubt. But then corporate profits would tend to grow in line with corporate sales over a long period of time. And then corporate sales tend to grow in line with nominal GDP. So earnings tend to grow in line with nominal GDP. And as we discussed, the returns from the market would be a function of earnings growth, and hence they end up becoming a function of nominal GDP growth rate plus the dividend yield. Hence, globally, that's been the case, and that's fairly healthy. Over the last 35 years, it has been 15% for India or thereabouts. But going forward from where we are, I think reasonable to expect low double-digit kind of nominal GDP growth rate, half of it coming from real GDP growth and half of it coming from, say, GDP deflator or inflation. So the second point that I would strongly recommend keep bearing in mind is that over prolonged periods of time, equity markets tend to return nominal GDP growth plus minus a couple of points here or there. Obviously, there are always exceptions, and people point out exceptions oftentimes like Japan and so on and so forth, which can be discussed separately. But that is the second one. Third point, I would say, in India's context, India is one of the most inefficient markets in the world, having managed developed world money, US and internationally, as well as having managed global emerging markets from Korea to Mexico. I very confidently state that India, and there are a lot of studies, don't just take my word for it. There are a lot of studies, including Wall Street Journal study that was published just before COVID hit, that Indian managers on average have delivered much higher alpha and persistent alpha, definitely against developed markets like US, but also other emerging markets. I think Wall Street Journal cites about three percentage points of alpha over the prior 10 years for average. I'm not talking about top decile, top quartile, but average. And for US, it was -1 to 2%. So if in dollar terms, worldwide, it's reasonable to assume going forward, market return to be 5 to 6% range. Rupee terms higher because rupee inherently has a depreciation angle. You know better, Abhishek, given your forex.
3 to 4%. Yeah,
exactly. So that would take rupee terms into double-digit zone. But the alpha, so total return is made up of market return plus the outperformance. The potential for outperformance, if you do it right, is a lot higher in India than elsewhere, because most of the markets are more efficient than India. So I lived 11 years, for example, in the US from 95 to 2006, but never invested through the dot-com bubble, anything in the US dot-coms or market, though I was investing client money in the US market. But my personal money, I had always invested in the Indian market, not because I believed Indian market would outperform US market or faster growth, blah, blah, blah. But my belief was always strong that I can generate more alpha in Indian market than in the US market with the same expertise, because US market is far more efficient. With the same expertise, you can generate maybe 2 to 3% alpha in US market, as you can generate 10% or so alpha in the Indian market. And since total return is market return plus alpha, the total return can be a lot higher in India. So to summarize now, 3 points: market is impossible to predict, but it gives, I'm talking about equity market, gives higher return than most other asset classes, being reflective of nominal GDP growth rate over time. And if you manage it well, Indian market has a potential for highest return given the inefficient nature of the Indian market.
That's some very interesting takeaways, Prashant. And interestingly, in India, and you know that better, that the trend is towards index funds also, and the trend is towards aspiring fund managers also. In 4 or 5 who have really come up in the last bull run. And I think people are actually investing in both areas, where in the US, I think the trend is more towards the vanguards of the world. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Because historically it was seen that, a lot of fund managers over a long period of time, once the market became more efficient, could not perform the index, outperform the index.
True.
As you rightly said, India is still inefficient. agree. Last question, Prashant, and I'll let you go. Uh, you have come a long way. I think 35 years of investing journey. What is something that you still want to do? That burning desire.
I think it's a bit like I often give many comparisons with cricket. In investing is to me very much like cricket was my first passion. I wanted to be captain of Indian cricket team when I was a kid.
That's right.
Before I found my equity passion, the first love was cricket, if you will. But equity has become like that for me. Couldn't become cricketer, but I found this as a passion. So if you ask a kid who loves cricket, if you'd asked me, as a kid, what would I like to do and anything more I would like to do, I'll say just play more cricket and keep playing more cricket. So on the work front, professional front, yes, want to continue to do this. This has been my only passion, if you will. Continue to learn more. One of my favorite pastimes when I go to bed is think about all the mistakes I've made. It sounds like punishing yourself, but in the right frame of mind, all the mistakes I made, and there are a lot of mistakes that you make in investing, and what could be the learnings from those mistakes. So the passion is to continue to do this, and on a personal front, want to spend more time with family, which is a challenge for all of us, I'm sure. But that's on work and on personal front what I'd like to do more of.
Lovely, Prashant. Thank you so much for all your inputs, your letting us know about some of the things that one should look at investing and how do you scale a business like this. I think it would be very useful for some of the prospective fund managers who are just trying to scale business, and how legacy and vintage is important, and keeping your cool with one of the basic things in Gita, that you come empty-handed and you go empty-handed. I think that keeps all the fund managers sober. So lovely interacting with you, Prashant.